Hey, this is Breeze Harper of the Sistah Vegan Project, and I wanted to share with you an amazing book that just came out. It's called Decolonize Your Diet. And this book is by Dr. Luz Calvo and Catriona Rueda Esquivel. And I was very excited when I found out that they were actually working on this concept. So I'll give you, some back information. I actually gave a guest lecture for Dr. Luz Calvo's class at Cal State, I think back in 2013, where she was giving a class about decolonizing your diet. And I thought this was an excellent idea because not only were the undergraduates learning about decolonizing your diet in terms of like reading the literature, but at the end of each class, they would explore foods in a way that had a decolonial approach to them and really understanding more or less certain indigenous foods, the power that certain foods had and the meaning applied before colonialism, industrialization, and then also learning how to decolonize your mind, your body through understanding the purpose of food, the meanings of food, and how colonialism has affected that, and how can we actually understand what food and health can look like outside of that, those negative legacies of colonialism. So guess what? Dr. Calvo and her wife, Catriona, put together this book. And it's a plant-based Mexican-American recipe book. It's focused on health and healing. And like, if you're me, if you're a critical race feminist interested in cultural food studies and are always perplexed why so many cookbooks, recipe books, especially the vegan plant-based ones, come out with such a post-racial perspective, knowing that we're all affected by legacies of colonialism and how it affects the food system, our relationship to food. When you actually, like you're me, you pick up a book that literally has decolonize in the title, then you know you're on to something good. So I'm going to read the back of the book. More than just a cookbook, Decolonize Your Diet redefines what is meant by traditional Mexican food by reaching back through centuries of history to reclaim heritage crops as a source of protection from modern diseases. Authors Luz Calvo and Catriona Rueda Esquivel promote a diet rich in plants indigenous to the Americas: corn, beans, squash, greens, herbs, seeds, and cactus, and are passionate about the idea that Latinos, especially Mexican Americans, return to their own culture's food roots for both physical health and spiritual connection. This vegetarian cookbook features more than 100 colorful, delicious recipes based on Mesoamerican cuisine that also include contributions from other indigenous cultures throughout the Americas. Steeped in history but very much rooted in the contemporary world, Decolonize Your Diet will introduce readers to the energizing, healing properties of a plant-based Mexican-American diet. And guess who did the foreword? Brian Terry of Afro Vegan. So like, this is what it looks like, you know? This is what the book looks like. Amazing recipes in here. Let me just show you some of the parts of the book. So on page 29, the authors talk about breast cancer. They talk about studies around Latino immigrant health in the US and make these connections to diet. And we understand diet is not the end-all be-all when it comes to health. I understand that, but these are one of the tools that one can use to really understand how central food can be in understanding the current, health disparities crisis among not just brown communities, but Black communities, indigenous communities in the USA. And they have these beautiful pictures in the book. Gorgeous. And narratives really telling you the importance of why these ingredients are chosen. Okay, so nothing is romanticized in the way I read a lot of these post-racial cookbooks where the authors themselves, due to their usual racial privilege, they don't need to really think about decolonizing their diet in terms of resisting those legacies of colonialism on their bodies. They don't think about these things. In addition, a lot of the ingredients that they talk about, they're highly romanticized, talking about this is a great super grain or a superfood from, type in the name of any indigenous culture mainstream has learned about from back in the day that was so great, the great Aztecs, the great Mayans. And there's this kind of romanticization of those particular foods. And there isn't really a connection to reality today, what's actually going on with people who are indigenous and or other non-white populations whose food systems up till now have been greatly compromised by the colonial project, that most white identified people, whether they want to admit it or not, actually benefit from. And looking at these books by authors that write mostly plant-based vegan books, raw food books that talk about like these superfoods, these powerful foods, and not really having that decolonial framework. And this isn't me saying that individually they're bad people, but we always talk about with the work that I do, how you frame, whether it's food, whether it's health, how you frame these topics is directly linked to how you've been socialized and racialized in this white supremacist racial caste system in the USA. And that's of course connected to all these other factors such as class and gender and sexual orientation. And most of these authors who write these books, especially the ones who are white identified, they don't talk about that. They don't think about how that even plays into how they write these books. And with this book, you definitely feel that that is the opposite of what's going on. So I want to actually read you another quote from the book that I found just great. So here it was, page 13. It's a little section called In Luce's Words. In 2006, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was stunned. I had been a vegetarian for 15 years and I considered myself to be very healthy. The entire year after diagnosis was consumed by treatment, surgery, chemotherapy, and emotion. Catriona became my caretaker and she was a total trooper. She took me to appointments, took careful notes on what the cancer doctors told us, did the shopping, and cooked for me as best as she could. Since I am the cook in our family, the whole world felt upside down. I was completely depleted. My spirit, usually strong, was barely there. With the diagnosis, time stopped as all my energy went to dealing with the treatments and to the basics of survival. Eventually, as I started to reemerge, I turned to research to answer the questions that were racing through my mind. Why me? Where did I go wrong? What can I do to survive this? My research led to some interesting findings about breast cancer in Latino communities. First, I found that Mexico has some of the lowest rates of breast cancer in the world. Second, I found a study published in 2005 that looked at breast cancer rates among Latinas in the San Francisco Bay Area where I lived. This study found that immigrant Latinas had significantly lower rates of breast cancer than U.S.-born Latinas. Moreover, the longer Latina immigrants lived in the USA, the higher their risk for developing breast cancer. Also, curiously, learning English was associated with a higher risk of breast cancer among the immigrant women. I started thinking about these findings and wondered what accounted for the differences. Something in the U.S. and something about acculturating to U.S. culture were likely contributing to these increased breast cancer rates. As I continued my research, I found that these statistics extended beyond breast cancer and were also true for many other diseases and health concerns. And that's when a light went on for me. What if the diet of rural Mexico and Central America, a diet that is ancestral and plant-based, beans, corn, squash, wild greens, nopales, fresh fruit, nuts, and seeds, were protecting folks from the diseases associated with life in the USA, such as diabetes, heart disease, and some cancers. So, once again, I know Dr. Calvo is not saying that if you don't eat a certain way, you deserve to get cancer, okay? Because I know a lot of people read that type of rhetoric and it's very off-putting for those who are dealing with cancer and are being shamed for not having the right diet. So that's not what Dr. Calvo is doing. What Dr. Calvo is doing is kind of making these connections. How deeply not only has colonialism impacted the food system, but when someone comes to the USA as a non-white immigrant and they're acculturated into this capitalist industrialized food system and in a system where the allopathic doctors themselves are trained less than 4 hours of nutrition, what are the consequences on certain demographics? And we know everybody is negatively affected, but the mere fact that the white, more class privileged demographic is not as negatively affected as the folk that she's talking about, the Latino immigrants, like that says something. And it really talks about what it means to lose one's culture and to kind of assimilate. So these are very important questions, and it's not very much an easy binary, black and white, as it's a gray area, the concept of co-creation and survival in the country. But using food as a platform to talk about this is very important. And I like the fact that, yes, this book is coming from women of color who are doing plant-based diets and coming from that racialized, embodied experience. And they're queer women, which to me is very important as a queer black woman who had similar experience with transitioning to veganism, because I had been exposed to Queen Afua, and I've talked about this over the years. I don't agree with her entire rhetoric because it can be very heteronormative and it's very cis-sexist. But her way of interrogating how has colonialism affected people with wombs and who are of African ancestry, and slavery, how does that affect our wombs and the way we've eaten, and why is it we have fibroids much higher? Let's go back and really think about what was done before colonialism. So I saw those connections, and this book is it's just filled with those type of connections, but also rejoicing, and using these beautiful foods to not just tell a story, but to heal not just individual bodies, but heal entire communities that have been so negatively affected by colonialism. Hence the book's title, Decolonizing Your Diet. So that's about it. The book is beautiful. The concept is beautiful. It's really gotten me excited about my book I'm writing right now, Recipes for Racial Tension Headaches, which is more going to be critical race narratives, and each chapter is going to end with recipe suggestions to deal with racial battle fatigue, or trying to do anti-racism work and needing more nutritional strength to get through it. So that's the book. And, I don't know what else to say. It's great. Check it out. Decolonize Your Diet. So thank you, Luz and Catriona. Beautiful work. And I can't wait to see more. I can't wait to see more. And I hopefully you'll be in the Bay Area where I live to talk about the book and maybe do some culinary shows around the book and talks. Thanks.